Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Pits of Motor Chaos. This is your host, Dave. I got my special guest, top alcohol dragster driver, Tom Fox. How you doing, Tom?
Hey, I'm doing good, Dave. Thanks for having me on tonight.
Oh, no problem. I do what I can to promote you guys, get you out there. So, how'd your year go this year with the dragster?
Well, you know what? We had a really interesting year. We went to 12 different races, from starting out in Gainesville, Florida, all the way up to Epping, New Hampshire. We went out to as far west as Chicago. We raced in Indy for the U.S. Nationals, qualified at our first U.S. Nationals, and reset our personal best at 11 races in a row this year. And finished up in Charlotte this year with a career best 5:25 at 273 mile an hour.
Wow, not bad.
Yeah, so we finished 6th in the East region, and we finished 17th in the nation. Previous best was 25th, and so we moved up in not only in our performance but our consistency, and we elevated our program. So I feel really good about our season and really excited about next year, because I think we accomplished a couple of monumental tasks, right? As a driver of a top alcohol dragster, certainly there's a lot of focus that needs to go into that. But being a father-son team, we do everything ourselves. So we have crew and we have support and we have sponsors, but the bulk of the preparation, the logistics of getting to and from the track, driving the tractor and trailer to each race, my dad and I do all of that. And but we achieved performance based on improving the quality of parts that we had together in the car and fine tuning that collection of parts. And then the second part is that we were able to kind of work on the tune up and make small adjustments to continue to go faster. But I think the third and most important thing is that as a driver, I think I achieved more from a standpoint of I learned more. We were in situations, where somebody deep stages on you, or you're, in the staging duel or the timing battle, and just becoming more focused and learning, what the car needs, and as a driver, really, being able to understand the difference between, tire shake that's normal in these cars, and you can drive through it and take it all the way to the RPM and the shift, and knowing when it's not right and you just need to get out of it. And I think from that standpoint, as a driver, I was able to save and abort runs that weren't right instead of damaging parts and trying to make something happen. So from that aspect, I think we learned a lot this year.
Oh yeah, well, the more you get out there and run the dragster, the more you learn.
Absolutely, that's true.
So now, you were talking about staging duel. What do you think about the staging duel with Steve Torrance and Cameron? What do you think about that ordeal?
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said you were talking about staging duels. I said, what are you thinking about the staging duel between Steve Torrance and Cameron Ferry?
Well, you know what? I think there's two different ways to look at that, right? As somebody that's vying for the national championship, you need to really understand that you have the target on your back, right? You always need to be on your A game. You always need to be focused. And I think Cameron, as a younger driver, trying to take a little bit of a performance advantage and trying to, use that to his advantage. I think there's some gamesmanship that goes into that, right? Certainly the crew chiefs and the tuners and all the crew do their work, right? And they prepare the car to do a certain amount of, performance. And the driver also needs to do their part. And, we see it a lot in our class, because a top alcohol dragster that's supercharged on methanol leaves it, let's say, 7,000 RPM. And the injected nitro burning A fuel cars, they leave it in idle. So it's a little bit easier for them to, play a game on the starting line, because we rev our car up to, more than they might even go to in the entire run. So there's a little bit of timing it's important. So I think, Cameron tried to take a little bit of advantage, and I don't think Steve Torrance as a competitor. I think he lost his cool a little bit. And is that justifiable because you're a fierce competitor, or is it looked at as maybe you just lost your cool? And I think he lost his cool. I think he knew what was on the line. I'd like to think that I'd handle that a little differently, but we've had some situations where we weren't too happy with the outcome. But I think as your performance increases, you need to be more aware of those things that drivers may try to do to steal one from you.
Yeah, I agree with you. So now you run an 85% nitro?
No, we run Supercharged on methanol alcohol. So we run the M1 methanol and no nitro in the motor at all. So the difference between the two cars is, our car has a supercharger that'll, spin the motor up to around 11,000 RPM, whereas the A fuel car, which runs on nitromethane, they may only run their cars up to 7,000 RPM. So we have a transmission, and we have two shifts with a 3-speed transmission, and they run a direct drive. So the difference between them is one is, all aggressive, more based on the clutch and, how much you put on there. And then ours is engine speed, clutch speed, as well as transmission speed. So there's a little bit more to do in the supercharged car because we'll be shifting twice, leaving at a higher RPM, and, instead of just sticking it and steering it, as they used to say back in the old days.
Now, do you think you'd ever go into nitro?
Well, I guess it's a matter of combination, right? The chassis that we have and the car that we have is set up really for supercharged car. So at this point, there's really no thought to go in that direction. But I do think that the sport is moving in the direction. I mean, this year we had our, Megan Meyer had a fantastic season, but she won the national championship and stole it away from Sean Cowie. So, being a supercharged car like some of the past champions like Torrance or like Joey Severance and Sean Cowie, puts us in, somewhat of a smaller category within our class. But this year we were fortunate enough to represent the quickest and fastest blown alcohol race car east of the Mississippi. So quite an accomplishment.
So now let me rewind the clock back with you, Tom, and ask you, how did you get into drag racing? Was it your dad?
Well, yeah, my dad was back in the front engine top fuel dragster class back in the late 60s and early 70s with his brother Ed Fox. So they raced through the late 60s and early 70s, and then got out of it to raise a family, move on in their lives. And in the mid 90s, we had an opportunity to get back into drag racing, helping a fellow racer, Ned Ott. And my dad and I went over and we looked at his operation and what he had, and he asked us if we would help him. And so I got involved with working on the car, learning to do the clutch, do the bottom end, helping my dad make tuning calls. And we helped drivers like Ned Ott and John Rose and Paul Sylvester. And I got an opportunity to get in the car a few years ago, and we had some really good performance success, and I felt like I was hooked. And, once you go, 250, 260, 270 mile an hour, there's not many things that give you that thrill of the acceleration, the adrenaline rush, and then the deceleration when the parachutes come out on the other end. So, my progression was, working on the car and understanding everything about it, and then, progressing up through and the ability to, get behind the wheel. So as a father-son team, we've tuned to national event wins. We won the Keystone Nationals with Ned Ott driving. We won several regional events with John Rose driving for us. And now I want to be able to grab a Wally with the father-son team that we have now. So we've been fortunate enough to have some good support. with Penn grade motor oil, high performance motor oil this year. VP Fuels, helping us with some of the best, racing fuel out there. DJ Safety with their support for, safety equipment, fire suit, and, the stuff that makes sure that everything's safe and right. And, certainly we have some, smaller sponsors that have been there with us through years. Fast Signs, Finish Line, Retreat, Olson Machine Shop does a lot of work for us. Rick Middleton's been a big supporter for us, along with his buddy Troy. Transaxle, where my dad works, AC Grinding, Hillock Anodizing, Eastern Metal Spray, Deca Batteries for starters and onboard batteries, Auto Parts Plus, Maury's Pier down in Wildwood, and Thompson Motorsports, AJ Thompson, with supplying us with some of the brake clean and things like that you need to keep the car looking good, clean, and performing at its best.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned DJ Safety. All I hear is good things about Big Ben over there.
Yeah, Big Ben's a great guy. I met Ben a few years ago out at PRI, and he was saying, he's like, well, what are you doing for a fire suit? And I said, well, I'm using an old one that was a hand-me-down. He's like, well, let's measure you for a fire suit. And I said, all right. So, we were out there, and I guess PRI is coming up in a couple weeks out in Indy, and we'll be out there again this year. But I met Ben there, and we wound up measuring me up for a fire suit. We got a fire suit from him the next year, and he's really helped, from a grassroots kind of, smaller team with parachutes and safety equipment and the whole fire suit. Ben's really taken care of us, and we met, and Ben had his elf on the shelf out with us when we were getting ready for the holiday season. So we did a little bit of celebrating with him, and ever since then we've been really good terms. Him and Steve Musser, we took their team out for some cocktails and a little bit of adventure out in Indy, and since then they've really done a lot to help us. And you can't do this kind of stuff without the support. My dad, he's really kind of the driving force behind our team, and we keep the race car and everything at his shop in Cinnamon, and Steve Musser is our team marketing manager, and Bobby Toth, car chief with us, helping with everything. And then we have a whole list of crew that maybe they're not all there all the time, but either behind the scenes at the racetrack or out on the road. Luke Ellis, Brian List, Skip Stang, TJ Aldrich, Lulu, Tom Schwarko, Ed Fox, Mark Bittner, my sister Cheryl and her husband Brett and their two kids, Denise Patton from VP Fuels. She's really been, pivotal in helping us not only improve our image, with some high performance race gear, but also just being there in support and, bringing us fuel and things like that. Cousins and family, my Uncle Steve Kramer, Donnie, Renee, Chris, and Mary Rose Detke, Aubrey and Danielle Collins, Benny Nieves. And then, we couldn't do this without, my mom, Angie, my wife, Kathy, Steve's wife, Jen, and the kids, my son, Tommy and Alyssa, and Connor and Kelsey, and Jack and Chase. And then, you can't forget about the people that have kind of driven you through this sport, and the ones that have passed and gone on, like my dad's brother, Ed Fox, Joe Nocentino, Sammy Cascarelli, and then, of late we just lost, a really influential person in not only, the alcohol class, nostalgia for the time bomb, Rocky Roxaloo, who, was kind of like a mentor to Steve and I, and, good friend, and he unfortunately lost the battle of the cancer just a few weeks ago, and we're having a memorial service for him this coming Sunday. So, you got to remember the people that helped you to get there and helped you go through the sport. So it's nice to remember them. It seems like, there's always somebody that's slipping away. So it makes you appreciate what you have in front of you. And I feel fortunate to be able to drive a race car at 273 mile an hour. And, we represent one of the fastest accelerating vehicles that still travels the quarter mile. So, I feel fortunate and blessed, and I'm anxious to get back in there down in Gainesville in March.
So now the Time Bomb funny car, you've driven that car before, right?
No, I've never actually driven the Time Bomb, but I've been there. I've helped them with it. That's kind of like our sister team. So we share resources, we share crew members, and we help each other out. We do some car shows together, and attend events together and stuff like that. So it's kind of like our sister team. So hopefully we expect the car to still make some appearances next year. Even though the car owner, Rocky Roxlow, isn't with us anymore.
Now, have you ever driven a funny car?
I did. I drove the Screaming Eagle funny car, which is a nostalgia funny car owned by Rocky Perone, and that was a lot of fun. First time that we got to drive it. We made some passes in Atco. We were down at Cecil County, and then I went up to Epping, New Hampshire, and got a chance to race up there, and that was the first time I have ever been to Epping. And the funny car is a completely different experience. For those of you that don't know the difference, our dragster is about 283-inch wheelbase, and the funny car is about 118-inch wheelbase, and they're a handful to drive. They can get out of shape really quick. And you really have to muscle them a little bit more. It's kind of like with the dragster, you want to finesse it. You want to keep it straight. You want to know what it's doing. But the funny car, you really got to manhandle a little bit, which, some say that it's way more fun. But when that body comes down, if you're claustrophobic, boy, it changes everything in a hurry. But that's also what makes it more exciting.
So now, what year did you actually begin your drag racing career?
So the first time I ever went down the drag strip was in 2012. I had an opportunity to get in the Top Alcohol Dragster, so never in a street car or anything like that. And the first couple of passes that you go out to do that, the first pass you really just do a burnout, back up, and launch the car and then lift. And that seemed relatively easy. And the second pass you run it out to first gear, and then you push the button and lift. So as I got to the third pass, where you're really going to start to now feel some more of the power because you do a first and second gear shift, I did that, and I'm like, all right, I'm ready for more. And then on that fourth pass, which is supposed to be a moderate pass but all the way down the track, when I swapped feet, the whole world changed. And here my dad hadn't told me that he had a throttle stop on there for the first three passes. And on the fourth pass, he took it off. And it was like completely night and day. The car accelerated so much harder, so much faster. And when you leave the starting line, the first couple times you do this, it's almost like your mind is still there on the starting line. And you got to play catch up. And once you make a couple of passes, then you start to get acclimated to it. But everything goes so fast and changes so quickly that, it's really not something that you can prepare for unless you get in there and do it. And that's certainly one of the experiences, because even though you're strapped in and you're back against the seat, when you accelerate with 3.5 or 4 G's of acceleration, it certainly changes your perspective pretty quickly.
So now, what track did you get your Alcohol Dragster license at?
I got my final license. I made the first 3 passes at Cecil County down in Maryland, and then I actually got my license at Atco in South Jersey, which is real close to. I live in a town called Chemung, so that's kind of like my home track. So it was nice to get my license at my home track, and then ever since then we've continued to go quicker and faster every year, and I think we're running the 520s is certainly a big performance barrier, but I look for being able to go in the 5 teens at over 275 this year.
So what was your fastest pass?
The fastest pass for me, the first time we ever went a 520 was up in Epping, New Hampshire, and we ran a 526 at 272. And the race after that, where we were down in Charlotte, is where I had my best pass, seconds at 273 mile an hour.
Now, when you got your license, who signed off for your license?
So when we were there was a couple different drivers. John Rose Jr. signed off on that. Paul Gold and the track owner of ATCO at the time signed off on that. So we had and that's Lenny Capone. So they signed off on the license, and the rest is history.
So now, what keeps you passionate about drag racing?
Well, it's kind of a couple things, right? Number one, it's the ability to do something, monumental with your family, right? My dad is, him and I get to do, everything together on the car. But there's a little bit of a passion to continue to push the envelope, right? Not only personally, but what you're able to do and put the parts together in the car and see it all come together. Some people just look at what you do at the racetrack, and that's only a small portion of it, right? My dad says to me all the time, he's like, you don't win races at the racetrack, you win them at the shop in preparation. So it's kind of, gathering of people. It's the adrenaline rush of being able to drive the car. The rush of putting everything together and making all the finite little adjustments to make the car go faster and quicker. And being able to look at the computer and download it and read that. And, over the past season, I've become more involved with making the tuning decisions with my dad. And, behind the scenes, we call it tuning the tuner. So if we can make small adjustments and, see what it does, that can help us to, keep pace with the other teams. Whereas, sometimes my dad wants to make a bigger adjustment. And if you go out and smoke the tires, it doesn't matter how fast you qualified. The next round of eliminations, you need to be able to repeat. So I think that's part of the challenge, right, is to keep moving in the right direction and going quicker and faster without going over center and losing your edge. So I think that passion really comes from, wanting to hold a Wally together with my father, with him as the tuner, me as the driver, and, the collection of family and friends that we have, and keep racing together as much as we can.
Now, besides your dad being a big influence for you for drag racing, are there any other drag racers that were influential to you when you started out?
Well, yeah, certainly Big Daddy Don Gartlitz and Don Prudhomme are, some of the ones that were definitely, in the picture. John Force, always looking up to them and seeing, how they were, got to a point in their career where they were totally dominant. And then certainly my dad's brother Ed, who was a driver, and he drove when it was a front engine top fuel car. And we used to talk about, what it took, and he said, don't let anybody, fool you. These aren't easy cars to drive. It takes a lot of focus and determination and willpower. And you can't be afraid of it, but you need to be able to respect it. Because these things can get away from you in a hurry. And, if you see one of our fellow Supercharged drag racers out west this year, Fred Hassan, had a pretty nasty crash. And, luckily he was able to walk away from it. But, you have to know the limits. And the tough part is that when the car's on a really good path, you know it, and it's almost smooth like a Cadillac. When it's not, and it's shaking and vibrating, it feels faster, but that's when you need to make sure that you're straight and you're safe. Because if you're not, you lift out of the throttle and you live to race another day. So, for me, learning that fine line is something that I feel like with each pass you get a little bit more experience about that.
Now, have you had any accidents in your drag racing career?
Unfortunately, I can say that I did. I flipped the car over, upside down, and backwards, and went through the lights at 170 mile an hour at 7.10 seconds in a quarter mile. And we were testing the day before the regional event at ATCO, and somebody had oiled down the left lane, and they used that new rice ash to dry up the oil, and the left lane is the one that was oiled down, so I didn't have any thoughts that it would impact us in the right lane. But some of the ash was still on the track. And what had happened is the left wheel spun, the right wheel hooked up, and it wanted to shoot me left into the side wall. And luckily I was able to correct it and get it off the wall. But in doing so, it then wanted to shoot over to the right wall. And as I'm steering the car off of and away from the wall, it went into a slow lean and spin and laid over on its side and spun around upside down. So when a racetrack that's 65 feet wide and you have a race car that's 32 foot long, to be able to be completely sideways and upside down and backwards and never hit the sidewall, I kind of feel like I had somebody looking over me. But it was a scary moment. But I learned from that. I learned when you get to a certain point as a driver, you think that you can save it or correct something, but learning when to just back out of the throttle when it's not right is really important. So I learned from that, and I feel like from that experience, I'm a better driver.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of drivers been, getting in crashes and walking away with pretty, not in one piece, no injuries. They walk away. That's got a lot to contribute with the safety of these vehicles.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a roll cage around the driver with a titanium shield. There's a carbon fiber complete capsule, and the chassis and the frame is designed to break away in a big impact. Luckily, for me, I've never had that big impact where you hit the wall, because it's not the speed that hurts you, it's that rapid deceleration. So, if you can keep it off the wall and you can keep the shiny side up, that's always a good thing. And, certainly I've seen my fair share of drivers crash. And, one of the guys that, has really had some good luck, depending on how you look at it. But, he's had a couple of accidents in the past 3 years, and DJ Cox is a driver that I respect, and, he's tough as nails. But, sometimes these cars, when they get away from you, it's better to just get out and save the run. But the competitor wants to keep going, right? You want to try and win the next round. So I guess with that, a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of insight, and, sometimes certainly a little bit of luck as well.
Well, knock on wood, Tom, you won't get in any more accidents.
Amen to that, brother. I'm knocking on the wood desk right here in front of me.
Now, when you're out on the track, Tom, you have any pre-race rituals or superstitions out there?
I'm sorry, you broke up there for a second. What's that?
I said, when you're out on the track, do you have any pre-race rituals or superstitions?
No, you know what? I like to have a little bit of quiet, when I'm, getting ready to run before the race. I do like to pray. The RFC Racers for Christ are always there, the chaplains. So, I'll pray with them before the event. But, more so than that, it's just about the ritual of getting your head right. I like to sit in the car and I like to go through, with my eyes closed, all of the things that I do between the burnout and backing up, bringing it forward, cleaning the motor out, bringing it up into the staging lane, making sure the shift buttons are out, and pumping the brake up to get it, make sure the brakes are nice and tight, and then, bringing it in and practice leaving. I have a practice tree that I work on, just on my phone. It's one of the JAGS practice tree applications. But you go through all of those things in your mind before you even make the run. And the idea is to try and eliminate some of the broken thoughts. Try and making sure to focus on exactly what your job is. And as a driver, my job's pretty simple, right? Point it straight, keep it in the groove, keep your foot in it, hit your shift points, pull the parachutes. But all of that happens in under 5.5 seconds. And, when you're accelerating, sometimes you feel like you want to hit that shift a little early. But what I've learned this year is that, as long as it's a safe pass, If you run out that first gear shift and you hit your shift lights, you're going to be on a better path hands down than if you short shifted, even if it felt like it stopped pulling, because it's all relative, right? You hit both of your shifts, you keep the clutch and the engine in its performance band, and there's way more upside potential. Plus, it's easier to tune the car when you drive the car and repeat and make the same steps and actions every time. So, for me, the ritual involves, praying with the chaplain, getting my head on straight, and focusing on exactly what I need to do.
Now, what kind of preparation goes in, for you to get ready for a weekend of drag racing?
Well, there's certainly the service on the car, right? After every race, we take the supercharger off, the heads off, the transmission out, the clutch out. We go through the whole bottom end, the rod and main bearings, and, service all of those components so that when we put it all back together, everything's right for the first round of competition. But in addition to just prepping the race car, you have a tractor trailer that you need to make sure there's fuel and oil in. There's propane for the refrigerator for the toter home. There's food for the crew and soda and water and drinks. My dad drinks coffee endlessly at the track, so we got a Keurig that's always going. So making sure we got water and milk for him for his coffee, and then you have all the oil and the fuel and all of the spare parts that you need for the car, spare tires, spare parachutes, the extra fuel. We run a compressed air CO2 bottle that helps fire the shift button for the transmission. So we have 7 bottles that we bring with us and fill up, so they have to be filled with the CO2. Charging of all the batteries, not only for the starter for the car, but also for the onboard computer, for the Leahy system, which is part of the safety system. That in case something fails or there's a crash, the parachutes, the fuel, and the spark can all be shut off electronically with an RF box in the back. So that's got to be set right. We got to make sure that the tires are properly inflated and rotated on the car. The wheelie bar has to be adjusted properly. The pitch and angle of the wing based on the atmospheric conditions. And then, of course, in addition to that, you have the tow vehicle that's a support vehicle at the racetrack. So when we load up, we put the race car all the way to the front of the trailer. We put a minivan in back of that. And then we have a scooter for getting around in the pit. So a lot that goes into it, even behind the scenes, in addition to just the race car.
All right, now I just had a message from a listener. They had a question. They said, "Are you any relation to Michael J. Fox?"
No relation to Michael J. Fox, no. But certainly a great last name.
Yeah. So now, what are some of your favorite tracks to race on?
Well, I think Epping, New Hampshire is one of my favorites because of the fact that we won our first 520 there. So, that was the first time that I had raced in the dragster up there was this year. And we had a makeshift crew, Jagger Neves, his brother and his dad were there, and Laura Neves was the brand new backup girl. So we had kind of a little bit of a mix of newer crew, and yet the air was right, the track was right, and so that definitely goes down as one of my favorite tracks. But we've had a lot of fun in Charlotte. Gainesville is a great track. It's a nice trip to go down. The end of February, beginning of March, when it's cold up here in the Northeast, and you go down to Florida. It was great to run out the U.S. Nationals in Indy. Chicago's got a really great historic racetrack. Ohio's been cool. I think, probably one of my favorite tracks over the years has been Maple Grove, though, because not only did we win the Keystone Nationals there in '97, but in the following year with John Rose driving, we won 2 regional events, one of them being at Maple Grove. So that's kind of like a historic track, and it's been, later in the season with the cool weather. So if I had to pick my top favorite, it would probably be Maple Grove.
So how many times have you been to Route 66?
We've only been there once. So this year represented the first time we went there. And certainly, from living in New Jersey, it's a good 14-hour pull. And, a lot of driver swaps with me and my pop. But it's nice to be able to go out and, I work in the mortgage industry for my career. So when people buy homes, I do the financing for them. So even when I'm on the road, I have my laptop. I'm able to, stay in touch with my clients or do the things that you need to do. But it's nice to be able to hit these tracks. And, depending on how the season goes this year, we're looking to possibly go out to Vegas and Pomona to finish up the season this year. So that's one of the historic tracks. We've been out to Bakersfield out in California with the Screaming Eagle Funny Car. And it was neat to see a lot of the West Coast influence out there. So, if things go well for us in 2020, we'll finish up our season in Pomona.
So you're looking to do more events next year than you did this year?
Yeah, we're actually, looking to step up our level of sponsorship. And, we've been very fortunate with, who's been a part of our team. And we're looking to increase our spare parts and our cylinder head production. So, by having, more spares and replacement parts, it gives us an opportunity to really do more and to go faster on a consistent basis.
Now, for your one trip to Route 66, how'd you do at Route 66?
We qualified 12th there, and we ran into Chris Dempke first round. And unfortunately, we ran a 33, and he ran a 526. And he put us back on the trailer. So I feel like we did well. We qualified everywhere we went this year. We had a couple of top half qualifying positions. So we're definitely heading in the right direction.
All right, now, what have been some of the milestones of your racing career so far?
Well, being able to qualify at Indy for the U.S. Nationals this year was very cool. Resetting our personal best and breaking into the 520s this year certainly is on the tops of the list. But winning the Keystone Nationals at Maple Grove and winning in Maple Grove for the regional event was really cool. But getting to see the front engine top fuel cars run in the Cackle Fest is always something that I love doing, and being a part of the nostalgia circuit with Bob Toth driving and Steve Musser and the Time Bomb has certainly been cool. So it's been a lot of driving both the funny cars and the alcohol dragsters. And earlier this year we were engaged with a couple of teams about possibly even going top fuel at some point in time. But I think we have a little bit more to accomplish here in Top Alcohol Dragster. I'd like to compete for a regional championship this year, and I'd like to finish in the top 10 nationally. So that's kind of the goals that we're looking for this upcoming season.
Awesome. So I'm going to ask you some fun questions here now.
Sure.
Outside of drag racing, do you have any other hobbies, Tom?
Yeah, so, prior to, doing the racing, I did a lot of bicycle racing. So, both on the road and mountain bike racing. I enjoy skiing. We spend a lot of time. I'm not far from the Jersey Shore, so, we'll go down to Ocean City, New Jersey, do a little surfing, a little fishing, and enjoying, the beach. So between the racing, skiing in the in the mountains, and then being down on the beach in the ocean, that's certainly, and then I have boy-girl twins that are freshmen in college now, but for years I coached them in baseball and soccer and basketball, so it was always cool to be involved with the kids. Now they kind of need you a little bit less, and we're expecting them home from college for the weekend, so I'm looking forward to spending some time with them this weekend as well.
Awesome. So now, what's been one of your most embarrassing moments on the track?
Well, we were up in Epping, New Hampshire, this weekend, and or not this weekend, but this season, and we qualified well. Like I said, we ran our first 520, and in the first round of eliminations, I was pulling the car up into staging, and I put the top beam on, and the competitor in the other lane double bulbed me right away. And I saw the first bulb go on, and I looked down to, get set and pump my brake, and here I got timed out because he went into both beams right away. And I think that, for me, that was perhaps a really good learning moment, right? I mean, we had just run a 520, and the competitor, we got timed out because I didn't bump in within 7 seconds, and he ran a 540. So in my mind, we left that run on the table. And, it's something that happens. Certainly, I feel like I learned from it, but, when you get taken to school like that, you learn from that, sometimes hard lessons, but I'm happy that it happened, and I'm happy to say that I'm a better driver because of that.
All right. So now, Tom, what is your favorite food to eat?
My favorite food at the track, or
No,
just in general?
they eat in general. What's your favorite food?
Well, you know what? I really love pizza, but if I have an opportunity to get a really good steak, the steakhouses here in Philly or around the country are always awesome. So, a Texas Roadhouse or something like that, or a Capitol Grill. I love a good steak.
All right. Now, what's your favorite beverage?
Well, right now it's bourbon. This year, as a driver, we put the car on a diet, and I also went on a diet. So I was able to lose 15 pounds by cutting out the carbs of beer and just drinking bourbon. And so I'd have to say, if it's a little Maker's Mark bourbon, it would certainly do the trick.
What's your favorite non-alcoholic beverage?
You know what? I love chocolate milk. Reminds me of being a kid, and certainly you can't go wrong with a little chocolate milk.
All right. What's your favorite music?
You know what? I'm into a lot of genres of music, but a band that I've been listening to lately is Tool. But certainly love the classics like the Rolling Stones and Bruce Springsteen and the Doors. But I can listen to anything. Certainly my kids have been listening to a lot of that younger, pop country stuff. And while that's not my favorite, I certainly can tolerate it.
Yeah, older country is better.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now, what's been the fondest memory of your drag racing career?
The finest moment was standing on the starting line with my dad on either side, us on either side of the car, and playing the national anthem when we were getting ready to run Jay Payne, who was the previous year's world champion at Maple Grove. And we fired the car up after the national anthem and do the burnout and back up and, staging the car for the final round. It was the first final round at a national event that I had ever been part of. And Jay Payne popped the burst panel right on the starting line. And we had a solo shot, and Ned Ott went coast to coast for the victory. And it really was, that you never forget that first win, as a team. And certainly that's a moment that'll stand out for a long time for me.
Awesome, Tom. Well, I want to thank you very much for taking time to do this interview tonight, Tom.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. We really like to say thank you to Pengrade and VP and DJ Safety for all of their support and performance. Thanks Steve Musser and my dad, especially my dad, Tom Fox, for all of his help and guidance. And, look forward to continuing to make some really good things happen in 2020.
Awesome. Well, I wish you, a happy Thanksgiving and a great 2020 drag racing season.
Thank you so much. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, and thanks for the opportunity to share with your fan base.
We'll get you on again in the future, probably next year.
Sounds good. If I could ask anybody